Today I'm going to show you how to draft this relaxed fit jumpsuit. It has these awesome details like a wrap front halter as well as a bracer back. It also has a drawstring waist with side trouser pockets and a drawstring at the hem. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Aletha of Ribbons and Zippers. If you're new here, I'm so glad that you found me. We are going to do awesome creations together. I love a well-fitted jumpsuit that looks good and feels good, and I think that you're going to like this design. I have designed it so that I'm altering it for my size body because everybody has a different shape. But it is an awesome jumpsuit. I think that you're going to like it. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Okay, so go ahead and grab your pattern paper. I am going to be using my alphanumeric paper. It's a dotted pattern paper, but you can go ahead and feel free to use the choice of paper that you like. And you're also going to be needing your bodice block and your sides. If you need to know how to create one, please check out my video, How to Draft a Bodice Block. Now, of course, you will need some tools. So I have my pattern weights, I have my see-through ruler, and my L square for straight lines. Now, for curves, I use this awesome pattern making ruler and my Dritz curve ruler. And make sure that you have a nice pointy pencil and eraser, and of course paper scissors. And I'm also going to be using erasable ink to color my lines, darken my lines, and make adjustments. These are erasable pens by Friction. They are awesome. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description so that you can go ahead and check them out. To get started, I'm going to draw a center front line. I'm going to place my front bodice on that line, and I'm going to hold it down with my pattern weights so it will not move. Then I'll just trace all the way around. So now I'm going to do the same steps for my back bodice. Now you want to make sure that your block doesn't move, so use as many weights as you need. Once you finish tracing your front and back bodice, add your desired seam allowances and your notches or any markings that you want. Okay, so I'm going to need to move this shoulder dart down. So I'm going to make a guideline through my shoulder dart to my back waist dart. And I'm going to draw a line down the center of my waist dart as well. So all of my patterns, like this one, has a small hole at the tip of each dart. This makes it so much easier for me to know where my center is. Now I only need the center of the shoulder dart as a guide. That's going to help me to know where to move my dart. I'm also going to draw in my waist dart and a reference line at the center of my waist dart as well. In just a few minutes, I'm going to show you why I've made these reference lines. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to work on my front of the pattern first. As you can see, the pattern has a wrap front. So that means I need to extend the waistline from the center front line so that both of the bodice front overlaps. Now for me, I'm going to extend out 6 inches. I am adjusting my pattern to fit my waist. Yours may be quite different. I'm going to use my pattern making ruler, which has a nice 90-degree angle. I'm going to match my center front line with the line on the ruler and move it to the end of my dart leg. and I want to make sure that I keep my 90-degree angle. So my guideline is exactly 6 inches. I can now take a long ruler and draw a line along the bottom of my neckline. Make sure that you go along the bottom of the neckline up to the neck. Next, I am going to drop my armhole down 1 inch and square it off about 1/2 of an inch, and then draw in my armhole. But before I extend my armhole curve up, I want to go back to my front and extend my neck 4.5 inches up and over 3.25 inches. Now I can take my curved ruler and make my armhole and my neckband. Okay, so here we have it. I made sure to angle my curved ruler to a point on my shoulder that is 3.25 inches, and then I squared up 4.5 inches just to make sure. And of course, I am going to smooth out any sharp angles. So now I can work on my back bodice, and just like with the front, I'm going to widen my waist. I want to widen my waist to adjust for my size, and as you can see in my drawing, I designed it with a nice racer back. I really love this design. So first I'm going to draw in my racer back design. I'm going to start by dropping my armhole 1 inch, square off 1/2 of an inch, just like I did on the front. But I need a reference point on my neckline for my racer back. So I'm going to measure over from my center back seam 3 5/8 of an inch. Now I can draft in my armhole and my back up to my neckline. Okay, so here's my beautiful racer back. I dropped my armhole 1 inch and I curved in and up to reach my reference point on my neckline. Now remember, my halter front is going to curve around to the back of my neck. In that case, I need to extend my back up to reach my halter. So on the armhole side, I am going to extend up 1/4 inch. And on the center back seam, I am going to extend up 1 1/4 inch. And then connect the 2 points. Now remember, I drew in the reference line from my back shoulder dart to my back waist dart. So what I'm going to do now is take out some of the ease on the back. This will tighten up the back and it's going to give me a nice snug fit. And at the same time, it's going to widen my waistline, which is exactly what I want. So I'm going to cut up the center of my waist dart and then through my shoulder dart down to my waist dart, but don't cut through. So cut to, but not through. Now I can manipulate my pattern, and what I'm going to do is close up my dart that I have moved down, and I'm going to measure 1/4 inch on both sides. So now when I overlap the opening, I've now closed it up by 1/2 inch. Now I can just true this line. So there we have it. Now I can notate my pattern, add an extra paper to open up the dart, and then add some notches. But before I cut out the patterns, I'm going to use my curved ruler to get rid of any sharp lines on my patterns. Depending on the type of fabric that you use, you can cut one fabric, one lining, or one fabric and one facing, or you can use bias binding. It's your choice. Now the last thing to do is to make my pleats. I'm going to make my pleat markings here. I made my lines as evenly spaced as possible. I'm leaving 3/4 of an inch on each side, and my pleat lines measure about 3.5 inches. Okay, so let's move on to the bottom part of the jumpsuit. As you can see in the drawing, my jumpsuit is easy fitting and it has a drawstring. Now I also need to adjust the waist, the hips, and the crotch area to accommodate for my tummy and my shape. So let's start by getting enough manila paper to draft on. Okay, first square a line over the width of the paper for the waistline. Now find the middle of the line and square down. Make sure that the line is absolutely straight and squared. Mark this point 0. Measure down from 0 to 1, which is your body rise measurement. So it's going to be the body rise measurement plus 1/2 inch. To get that measurement is very easy. Just sit on a flat chair, measure from your waist to the chair, and that's your body rise measurement. Once you have that measurement, square across both ways and mark this point 1. So this is the waist. Next is the waist to hip measurement. So from 0 to 2 is the waist to hip measurement. Mine is 8 inches. Again, square across both ways and label this hip and mark this point 2. The next measurement is 0 to 3, which is the waist to the floor. However, notice that in my sketch, I have a design detail on the side of my pants that is a drawstring. And my pants only measure to my ankle. Now what I've done is I've included in the pattern measurements that go beyond the floor so that you can decide whether you want floor length pants that you can wear really cute sandals with, or you can extend the length of the hem even further so you can also wear heels. The design is yours, so you have that option. Next is point 4. Measure from 1 to 3 and then divide that number in half and minus 1 inch. Then square across both ways and mark this line as 4 and label it. Now I'm going to start working on my front crotch area. This is the measurement 1 to 5. So on the body rise line, measure over 1/12 of the hip measurement plus add another 3/4 of an inch. Alright, so I marked that measurement on my line, and then I'll go ahead and square up through my hip line and to my waistline. And I'm going to mark those points 5, 6, and 7. From 6, measure over 1/4 of your hip measurement plus add another 1/2 inch and mark that point 8. Go back to point 5. We're going to continue to form our crotch. This time our measurement is 1/16 of an inch plus we're going to add another 1/2 inch. When we get that measurement, we're going to mark that point on the crotch line as 9. Now go up to 7 and move your point in from 7 over 1/2 of an inch and mark that point 10. Now we need to connect our points 10 to 6 and 6 to 9 by using our curved ruler. But before we do that, I want to create a line that's about 130 degrees angle. So I'm going to create that line from point 5 extending out about 130 degrees, and when we make our curve, we want to curve to touch that point at a specific measurement, and I'll tell you what that measurement is. So for a size 2 to 14, this line would measure 1 3/8 of an inch, and for sizes 16 through 24, the larger sizes, this line would measure 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and start from point 10 and go down to point 6 and start creating my crotch with my curve, and make sure that I touch this point, then continue out until I touch point 9. The next measurement is point 10 to 11. We're going to divide our waist by 4, and then we're going to add 2 more inches and mark that point 11. Okay, so the next measurement is our trouser bottom. So from point 3, measure out to 6 inches and mark that point 12. Now we're going to draw in our side seams. So from point 8, draw down to point 13 at the knee and then connect 13 to 12. Now go back up to point 8. Okay guys, so here is where you may see a difference in my draft. I'm accommodating for a larger waistline, so my connection from point 8 to 11 goes out. But if you are not accommodating, then from point 8, you would probably be curving in towards point 11. Also, in just a few minutes, I'm going to be adjusting the draft even more, because remember, the style is a gathered waist, and I also want to adjust for my tummy area. Now let's draw in the inseam. From point 3, measure out 6 inches and mark that point 14. Go up to point 4 and measure out to 15, the exact same length as 4 to 13. Now go ahead and join 14 to 15 and 15 to 9 with a slight inward curve. Now I want to measure the waist of my pants against the waist of my body, of my bodice. So I already added a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And as you can see, there is a waist start on the bodice, so it makes sense that the waist on the bodice is longer than the pants. And remember, I'm going for a gathered waist, so I need to widen the waist on my pants just a little bit, maybe only just 1/4 of an inch, but every millimeter counts. So starting at point 10, I'm going to start by matching the center front and walking my lines, and I'm going to mark a new point 11. Once I have my new point, I'm going to extend my side seam down past my hip line and now down to my knee at point 13. But I'm going to make sure to curve in slightly just before I reach the knee so it won't have any sharp angles. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab a marker and color my front pant before I start on the back. Okay, to begin, start by measuring the length of point 1 to point 5, divide it by 4. Don't forget to use my handy dandy ruler if you need to. Mark that point and square through the hip line and up to the waistline. Mark the points 16, 17, and 18. Measure halfway between points 16 and 18 and mark this point 19. Now from 18 on the waistline, measure in 3/4 of an inch and mark that point 20. Measure up 3/4 of an inch and mark that point 21. Now divide your waist measurement by 4 and then add 2.5 inches to that measurement. So divide your waist by 4 plus 2.5 inches. This measurement is going to be a slanted line from 21 down to the waistline, and where it touches on the waistline, mark that point 22. Now, just as I did with the front pant and the front bodice, I want to measure waist lengths and compare them, keeping in mind that my bodice already has seam allowance. Okay, so continuing with my pants back, I need a measurement for my crotch. So I'm going to measure the length from 5 to 9, divide it in half, and add a 1/2 inch. Once I have that measurement, I'm going to find that measurement on the crotch line and mark that point 23. Now measure down a small amount, 1/8 of an inch, and mark that point 24. So if you remember, for the front, I needed a touch point. The same thing applies for the back. So let's measure out a 130-degree angle from 16. And again, I'm going to give you those measurements. So for size 6 to 14, this line would measure 1 3/4 of an inch. And for sizes 16 through 24, this line would measure 1 7/8 of an inch. And when I make my curve, I'm going to make sure that it touches this point. Now the next measurement is from 17 on the hip line. That measurement is the hip measurement divided by 4. Plus, go ahead and add 3/4 of an inch. So 1/4 of your hip measurement plus 3/4 of an inch. And then mark that as 25. Here again is where I need to adjust my pattern to accommodate for my tummy. So again, if you are not accommodating, go ahead and use those measurements that I just mentioned. But for me, I am going to do the same adjustments that I did on my front. Okay, so the next measurement is at the floor and at the knee. I'm going to measure out 1/2 of an inch on both sides and mark those points 26, 27, 28, and 29. And I'm almost done. To finish, I'm going to connect points 24 to 29 with a slight inward curve and 29 to 28. Then I'm going to go to my side seam and connect 22 to 27 and 27 to 26. And remember, if you did not make any adjustments, you will be connecting 22 to 25 with a slight inward curve, 25 to 27, and 27 to 26. Okay, so that's it for today. I really hope that you liked this design. This is just the first part. We've drafted it, we made our pattern, and hopefully you're making your first fitting with your toile. And if it looks good, you're ready to move on to the next part. So I'll see you back here in part 2, where we go ahead and put this beautiful jumpsuit together.